Old Gold Club. Powered by Wolverhampton Building Supplies. With Mikey Burrows and Chris Iwelumo.
Welcome along to the Old Gold Club. I'm Mikey Burrows. Alongside me, as ever, is Chris Iwelumo. And our guest this week spent 10 years at Molineux between 1987 and 1997, making 353 appearances, 22nd on the all-time list, scoring 49 goals, joint 33rd on the all-time list. Welcome to the Old Gold Club, Robbie Dennison.
Not bad for a keeper, but was it?
It's not bad. It's not bad at all. Two of those goals, of course, came at Wembley. And I'm going to get this out of the way straight away.
Start with the good bit there, Mike.
Yeah. Start with the greatest moments. Goodness me.
Listen, obviously, whenever I joined 87, the club was sort of struggling a little bit, you know what I mean? It took a while to get things moving and get things back on course, but in those first couple of years, we were lucky enough to win a couple of championships, but also we played at Wembley twice as well, once in the Sherpa van and also in Football League Centenary as well. And I was lucky.
And you scored two incredible goals.
Listen, the bigger goals at Wembley, they definitely are. But it was great to be part of all that. Really, you know, it's a dream for any young lad or whatever to play at Wembley. To walk out in front of a full house as well, with I think it was over 50,000 Wolves fans there that day, and to win the game. And okay, everybody says it's, you know, it doesn't matter who scores, but whenever you look back on it 20 years later or whatever, then it's nice to score as well, you know, as well as winning the game.
I'm looking at one of the 30-yard strike right into the top. I mean, what's he doing? What's the keeper doing?
It's Neville Southall, you know what I mean? I think he was rated as one of the best keepers in the world at that time as well. No, listen, it's just one of those days. Sometimes they can go anywhere, you know. Hit a free kick as well, win behind, and the Sherpa van, but they can fly in sometimes, and they can fly over sometimes. But it was just a fantastic occasion, both of them. And great to be a part of it, and it was. I think the Wolves fans enjoyed it.
Because we were looking back on some of it, and when we went to Wembley to play Tottenham, just after Christmas,
yeah,
and it was kind of, and there was a realisation that it's kind of Wolves hadn't been there since then, since the
it's crazy,
88.
wasn't it? Yeah. It was actually my lad that told me that was the last, on the day of the game, my lad told me I was the last Wolves player to score at Wembley, so it really did take me back. You know, a club this size should have had more appearances at Wembley than what it's had. Obviously, it hit difficult times at times, but listen, it's getting back on track now, and hopefully there's another Wembley appearance on the way. So it's great to see how things are going now.
Because we've got to talk about what Wolves was like when you first arrived. Because I was looking through some of the stats books the other day, preparing for this, and like we talked a little bit about it with Ali Robertson when he was in, and about kind of just how low things had got. Because when you look at some of the footage from some of the games in that 80s period, you know, Molineux is completely different. There are stands that are not even being used. The attendances are down to like 6,000 at times.
I think I played a midweek game. I think I can't even remember who it was against. Maybe it was 5,500. Now I joined in March '87. We had a decent run at the end of the season. Just missed out on the playoffs that season, but the club was just getting back on the playing side, just getting back on track a little bit at that time. But you know, the state of the club with the change rooms, it just, you know, there's water coming through the ceiling. If it rained heavily during the night, there's water coming through the ceiling. The training kit, there just wasn't any training kit really. The first day I walked in was the Friday after deadline day in March. I signed on the Thursday, walked in on the Friday, and this lady walks in, Mrs. Clamp. She was the laundry lady, and she had a big basket full of what I thought were rags, really, you know what I mean? And she threw them on the floor, and all the lads scrambled to get the training kit, and I'm left there just sitting with my boots, 2 slips and a towel, and I'm wondering where I'm getting my kit from. And then Paul Darby walks out with a brand new bright red tracksuit for me, right, to wear straight out of the plastic, right, and I had to wear that. And you know what it's like when you go to a new club for the first time?
Yeah.
You just want to hide, don't you? You just want to get the first day over with, get to know the lads a bit, and I ended up in the bright red tracksuit. But listen, the facilities were poor, but I just came. I wanted to play football. I wanted to get games and get sort of back on track with playing. But that's really why I wanted to join.
Right, so you're 23 years old. Obviously at West Brom, played 20 odd games there.
Yeah.
It's not bad. Obviously, you want to play football. Wolves are in the condition they're in. Obviously, Bully had went, Tom Wood went. Did that play a part? Obviously, Graham Turner as well. Did he show a lot of interest and have that direct contact with yourself as well?
Graham Turner showed the interest that he wanted to sign me. I'd known that they'd been watching me for a few games, just because it was Ron Saunders at the time came in as manager. I think it was in January, 86 or thereabouts. But he made a play, and the lad wasn't his type of player. So you know eventually that you have to get away to play games of football. And that's what I wanted to do. It was getting closer to March, the deadline day, 87, and I'm thinking, what's going to happen here? Because he actually tried to sell me back to Ireland a couple of times, Northern Ireland. There's a couple of clubs interested over there, so I didn't really want to go straight back because I'd only just got off the boat, really, you know what I mean? So I didn't want to go back across there. I wanted to have a go over here still. And then Graham Turner came in for me right on the deadline and signed. The fact that Andy Thompson and Bully were here helps a little bit, but it was still, my decision was I wanted to play football. You know, wanted to get away, play football. When you walk into the changing rooms and you see some friendly faces, well, not so much Tom, but you know, you see a few others. But it's it's nice to know that you know a few people in the dressing room. But it was purely the fact that I wanted to get my own playing career back on track again, and I wanted to play football.
Could you sense that there was a good team building here at the time? Because you were close to getting promoted that year.
I think we won 11 out of the last 12. I think we lost to Southend in that run, and Southend were the team that pipped us for third place. It was, and then went in the playoffs and didn't really play well enough for the playoffs to go through. So we missed out on that. But I tell you what, you could sense. You know, there was a great atmosphere with the players. You know, there were a great group of lads. Enjoyed the crack. You know, enjoyed each other's company. We did work hard during the week. We did work hard because the gaffer made sure of that. You're expected to perform and do your job on the pitch, and if you did that, then everybody was happy then. But you just felt it was starting to turn a little bit, you know. Young side, there wasn't anybody. Ali Robb, you mentioned before, who Ali was probably the only one who really got a history of any sort of games behind them. Yeah. So there was young lads trying to get started in the game, enthusiastic to push on, and that's basically what was created in the first 12 months, 18 months of the Graham Turner's reign. What
was your expectations of yourself? You know, obviously you're signed, you want to play football, you want to be the best that you can be. Obviously a return of 3 goals, which is not bad as well. Probably a few assists in there as well. What was your demands on yourself as well as the demands from others on you?
To create. Yeah. Create. First and foremost, I think, you know, the creative side of me was more important sometimes than the goals. I knew I wasn't going to score 20 goals a season. Yeah. I liked to chip in, but in those days I was more a winger. You stayed wide, you know, take people on, get crosses in, come inside the odd time, get shots away, and hopefully score a few that way. So that's really what, from my point of view, that's what I wanted to do. I would have set myself targets in games. If I was involved in games, I would have tried to have 8 to 10 crosses and 2 or 3 shots at goal. If I wasn't involved, then I made sure that I was doing the defensive side of the game properly, which was never the strongest side. If you've seen me play, yeah, that was never the strongest side of my game. But you had to work as a unit. Yeah, you know, I basically worked with Tomo, played left back for a lot of the time. Mark Venus played left back. So I worked with them as far as getting back and tracking and doing with the defensive side. So from that side, yeah. But mainly for me, I wanted to get involved going forward.
Because you had licence, didn't you? Because, I mean, if you've got a striker like Bully, you need someone to put the ball in the box for him.
Well, of course, but I wouldn't call it licence. I would call it, you worked off your shape. You know, it was up to other people maybe to get me involved in the game because you're wide in the game. And then once I got in the last third, then it was up to me to create. And that's what I wanted to do, and hopefully I did okay over the years doing it.
Was that left to your own devices, or was this something that was instilled from Graham Turner or even like Robbo, these experienced players?
We worked really hard. 4-4-2, Chris, nothing complicated the way it is now. You see it more complicated now. We worked really hard off that shape. Every Thursday we would bang with and do and work on that shape and what we were going to do when the ball was played forward. You go and support, blah, blah, blah. And really that's what was instilled on how we worked. But also, the thing for me was with really good players for the level. Really good players for the level. You had Bully scoring 40 to 50 goals this season. You've got Muchie scoring 20, 25. I was chipping in, and defensively we're really solid. So if you get a team that's well organised and working hard for each other, and you've got good players for that level, you've got a chance of being successful. And I think the first 2 or 3 seasons, that's what you found.
Because Bully scored, I think it was 102 goals in 2 seasons.
In those first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you always? Do you often look at it and go, "I set up most of them. Why am I not getting the credit?"
Well, listen, I tell us the goals win you games, really, don't you? And people acknowledge the fact that who scores the goals probably gets the most praise, and that's the way it is, and gets the most accolades. My first 13 years was playing with Bully through West Brom, and then coming to here. Now our careers and Thomas' career as well sort of went hand in hand really for those 13, 14 years. Now we come away from the game, and Bully's got a stand name after him. He's got an OBE or an MBE, whatever it is. He's got the freedom of the city. You know what I mean? So goals win you games. But that's the difference, really, isn't it? But listen, any time I've been bought a pint in the pub, it's because of the goal I've scored at Wembley, or the goal I've scored my last goal against Man City and stuff like that. But for a fact, working off the team, your role in the team, and if you've done a good job, then you're happy enough for that as well. Because
I told Looms off trying to talk about this off air, and I wanted it to be on this show. On kind of, we often ask people what their value would be in the modern game, and if he's getting annoyed at me.
I don't think you should answer. I'll be honest.
If because if in your position, playing the way that you did, scoring the goals that you were capable of scoring, but also making the amount of chances that you did, you've got to be worth some money, haven't you? In the modern game,
you've got to give him. What I'm trying to think. Kenny Hibbett. That was 50. Was it 50 million?
Kenny. I mean,
Kenny was 50. Kenny thought he was 50.
That's what he threw out there. He rolled it into the.
It's so hard to judge, isn't it? It is so hard to judge. I'm not just sitting on the fence with it, really.
Yes, sure. Yeah. That's exactly what you're doing.
All right, 60 then.
60 it is.
I
think but seriously though.
But listen, I never
scored goals, making assists. You know what I mean? Kenny
played in the League One, Division 1 at that time. So he played the top division for 400 games, whatever it was Kenny did. I didn't. I played in the Albion whenever I first came over for the Albion. I played 15, 16 games at the top level. So most of my games were played up to championship level, really 2 or 3 years lower leagues, 7 years, 8 years in the championship. So if you're assessing it from that, then you wouldn't be 50, 60 million, whatever it's going to be. So I look at what's being bought now in the championship and stuff like that for decent championship players, and they're paying 10 to 15 million for them. So, but listen, I'm only guessing it. I might have game 20 years. My time was 25 years ago, so it is so difficult to say now.
Yeah, so but there's also the element that I guess modern day, given the kind of stats that you would have produced, there would have been, maybe not so much then, but like big clubs now, because of the fact that you count as homegrown, the whole Northern Irish thing coming through. There's that premium around the English league and players that come through from British players that, there would have been. I think people would have paid at least 15 for you in the modern game.
That's nice of you to say that.
At least 15.
Well, it's all a science now, so it is all stats and what you do, and you've got these things on your shirts and all to say how much you've run and all that sort of stuff now. They'd have probably looked at my stats and think it was broken a few times, you know what I mean? because the figures would be thrown up, but it was... No, listen, it's just a completely different game now, Mike, and it's only guesswork to say what value you would have in the team at the minute, but all I can say, my time was my time, and that's how I look at it, really. My time was my time. I had a fantastic time for 10 years at a great club, really, and that's what I look back on and think, what I achieved coming over from Northern Ireland at 22, late into the game, and I went on to get a couple of championships, play at Wembley a couple of times, and for me, that's massive satisfaction for me. So whether I'm worth 10 or 5 or whatever, it's neither here nor there, really.
Just looking at the stats as well. Is it the 80, 89, 90 season? Started every league game, scoring 8 goals, and a winner against the rivals as well. I mean, that's just putting zeros on the back of that, isn't it, Robbie?
Well, I think at that time, right, you could have named the team at that time. You know what I mean? I think probably 8 or 9 of the side, if you look at those stats, Chris, probably played the whole way through the season.
Yeah.
So the team, unless you were really you lost 3 or 4 in the spin, then the gaffer might think about changing it. But the game firstly, or the team firstly picked itself. Because we were winning most games, we were going out and doing really well. So the gaffer wanted to play the same team next game. So it was great to be a part of that. And as I say, the first 2 or 3 seasons of that was absolutely amazing, really, to be involved in, and also see the transformation that happened to the club through that. With the ground changing and the facilities that were non-existent, then coming to the fore. Then it was amazing to be a part of that.
Because you kind of had, I guess maybe like 3 different periods of Wolves. There's kind of the Wolves when you first arrived that has that incredible success and rises back up through the divisions. Then there's the Wolves that kind of is acclimatising to being back in the second tier and can't quite get above that kind of mid-table period. And then all of a sudden Sir Jack starts pumping money in and all these players arrive. Because I've seen you talk about the Graham Taylor era, and then it's an era where actually probably you don't play as much as you were in an earlier period. And yet I think you've been quoted on record as saying that if Taylor had stayed, if he'd had 3 years that Mark McGee had, then he would have got him.
Definitely.
You liked him, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I liked how he worked. But whenever Graham Taylor first came, I was out the door. I was out the door because he had signed Tony Daly, Steve Froggatt. He might have been at the club before Taylor arrived, or he just came whenever Taylor arrived. Paul Birch was at the club, so there's 3 wide lads who Graham Taylor loved, right? Who were getting in ahead of me, right? So I'm looking at where I'm going to be next season, really. And then Tony Daly went in pre-season, his first pre-season, and got his knee went, right? So that was him out for the full season. And then I remember I was in the squad to go to Reading and playing the game. Froggy got a really bad injury, Steve Froggatt. He was out for the rest of the season then. Paul Birch then in the second half, he got a really bad injury, right? So he was virtually out for the rest of the season. So Monday morning, the gaffer, Graham Taylor, calls it a meeting, and he looks around, he goes, 3 wide men, I've lost 3 wide men. He says, who am I going to play now? Right? And he looks at me and he goes, I suppose you'll have to. Right? So it's a bit of a laugh, you know what I mean? But I actually played the next game, Oldham away, scored a goal, and I got a really good run in the team then and did really well for him. But he was fair, you know what I mean? That's the biggest thing you want as a manager, or from your manager. If you do well for him, then he's fair. And I actually ended up getting another 2 seasons out of it. I got a testimonial year out of it. So for me, off the back of that period of about 4 or 5 months with him, he was really fair with me. So that's why I really like how he went about it.
How's your mental? You know, you have to have a kind of mindset in that when you're frustration of not playing, because you want to just play football. Yeah, you've got 3 players in front of you, albeit they all kind of fall to injury, but then to bounce back and him to have that little bit of banter with you, as funny as it was, it's still a serious thing to you. You want to go out there and play the best that you can. You score a goal, you get that run of games, but that period that you weren't playing, how was it coming in every day, training? That must be difficult. It
was difficult because the lads who weren't involved in the team were actually doing more running. They were doing more weights, fitness wise. They were doing far more than the actual lads who were playing then, Chris. But the thing about it is, and you know it as a player, you have to keep yourself right for the opportunity when it comes. Of course. And hopefully it does come. And if it doesn't come, then if you're playing reserve team football or whatever, then you have to try and impress the people who are watching you then. So really, that's the mindset that you were in, no matter. You have to be. Because it's difficult though, isn't it? It is, Robbie? Yeah. It's a nightmare sometimes. Absolute nightmare if you don't even not involved in the first team squad, and you hardly even come to the home games. Then you know what I mean, because you're annoyed with the whole thing and you want frustrated with the whole thing. Yeah. So you just want to get away and get playing again. But my mindset was keep yourself fit, and when the opportunity comes, if it does come, then you have to push on with it. And I was lucky enough that's what happened.
Because you talk about trying to keep yourself fit, because obviously there's a lot of injuries around at that period. I think you'd had an injury early 90s. You'd picked something up.
That was the last one, Mike,
yeah. Yeah, you were right after that. But it's kind of like, did you have to change your game after that? Did you feel yourself getting different role in the team as you got older? Because by the time Graham Taylor arrives, kind of you're getting around 30 odd, aren't you?
Injuries were never a problem for me, Mike. Never a problem. Had a couple of hernias along the way. One at the Albion, one at Wolves. I had my Achilles done, just scraped out and serviced. I think I was 94, 95 was the best thing I ever had done. Yeah. But injuries never really kept me out of much of the season, any part of the season. Whenever I had my second hernia done, it was Mark McGee's time, and it was actually they say, oh, it could be 6 to 10 weeks before you're back playing again. I was playing at Villa Park in the League Cup in 4.5 weeks after my hernia. Now, was it fit? No, it probably wasn't fit, but I wanted to get involved again. I wanted to play, and Mark McGee wanted me involved, so ended up playing. But I'd never had a problem with injuries at all. I think it was only whenever you were getting to 32, 33, 34, then obviously your game does change a little bit because you maybe haven't got the pace that you had before. But I was never really explosive anyway, Mikey. You know what I mean? So it wasn't a case of losing much pace, But injury-wise, I was fine. I didn't have any issues with injuries at all, so I was fortunate. And even now, I don't have any extra pains, so I'm okay. I'm okay that way.
Because we were talking about it before, that kind of nowadays, if someone gets to 33, 32, 33, 34, and they're still playing, no one questions it. It's almost the same. You don't get as long a contract anymore, but it's not as big a deal. Whereas maybe back then, was it different? When you go over 30, do people view you differently?
I think it had just started to change a little bit because Gordon Strachan around that time was pushing the boundaries, right? Gordon Strachan, I think, was 37, 38, 39 maybe, whenever. So everybody was starting to look at it differently, Mike. But whenever I first came over, you would have said 31, 32, everybody was looking at you as if, that's you finished, that's you done. But then it did, the whole mentality of, listen, if you're fit enough, or if you're old, or 35, 36, but if you're still fit enough to play, then let's continue playing. And Gordon Strachan for me was the one that really changed the whole attitude to that.
Yeah, I think gone are the days that players stay at clubs for such a long period of time. Is that a point where you get to a stage where you think I'm not a million miles away from that testimonial year? Does it play a part? Because you said yourself you've come into the team with Taylor. You've kept yourself in great shape. You've bounced back with a goal in the first game. You've had that run of games that's brought a bit of success for yourself. But it's extended your Wolves career because you thought you were gone.
Yeah.
Testimonial now. It's only a year and a half away. Mm-hmm. That does come into the head, surely.
It does when you're trying to agree the contract. Then it does because initially they only offered us a year, right? So I went and I said, listen, Tomo had got 10 years and he'd got a testimonial bully as well that came around the same time. My argument was, please can I have it? Yep. So they said yes, but then once you've agreed the contract and you're getting your testimonial at the end of the second year, then you want to play. You still want to play, you still want to continue. You're not just sitting on your laurels and saying, listen, I've got this coming up, blah, blah, blah. You want to play, still be involved and push on with it again. And if so, try to get another year afterwards and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So you just want to keep playing and playing. The money wasn't, in that time, Chris, wasn't the issue with it, the whole thing really. Nice to get the testimonial, but the money as far as agreeing the contract wasn't an issue at all. You just want games to get another few years out. Because
you obviously then, you had a loan spell away at Swansea, and then you actually did kind of force your way back in. You had, I think it was 14 appearances in 96-97, though the majority of them came in a middle period of the season.
Was that Mark McGee's time?
Yeah. Do you ever feel like you had more still left to give at this club before you left?
Yeah, at least another year. I probably was as fit as I'd ever been at 34 when I left. And I was as fit as I'd ever been, really. And as I said, I was never explosive as far as, losing pace and all that sort of stuff. At 34, I could still play, I could still do what I had to do, and I was still doing the same things that I was doing when I was 28, 29. So if you ask me that, yes, I do think I had another year, maybe 2 years here.
Why do you think you didn't get it?
I think it's always a case of managers looking change sometimes. I think the season, we might have gotten the playoffs the last season I was here. Did we get in the playoffs? Yeah.
Crystal Palace.
But there's always a case for whenever it doesn't quite happen. Managers looking change. If I've only played 16, 17 games that season, I've been there 10 years. Is it time to move Robbie on and try to get a fresh face in? Maybe that was the attitude, but it was. Sort of half expected. Halfway through the season, I sort of realised what was going on. But if you ask me fitness-wise and all, I think I've got at least another year left.
we often talk about kind of random events that happen through, because, you know, we've talked about Sherpa Van and we've talked about some of the other things. And Keith Downing talked a lot about the first day of the season at Scarborough back in the day. There's one other one that you're involved in, which we were talking a little bit before we came on air to record this, which is the trip to Newcastle.
Yeah.
New Year's Day, because there were fans who chartered plane to get up there. Like, and you lads were on a cheeky night out, were you not?
Cheeky night in. Listen, you know, some of the hardest times really whenever you are a professional footballer and all, I won't say hardest times, you know, it's a great life and everything about it is fantastic, isn't it? But you'll go away New Year's Eve, you're stuck in hotels, even Christmas Day, sometimes you're stuck in hotels, and it does drag you away from the family and all that sort of stuff. So, but we went up to Newcastle New Year's Eve, with Newcastle on the following day. The fans chartered flights up to get up to it, and we were allowed to have a couple of beers on the evening time. Now, some of the lads probably had a few more than they should have done. But we've gone out the next day and we were absolutely fantastic, you know. We played absolutely amazing. Bully scored 4, and it could have been 5 or 6 at the end of it all. But that performance that day, second half, was as good as I'd ever been involved in with the Wolves. It was amazing. The fans loved it and everything about it. Just even the fact that it was New Year's Day and everything about that was just totally amazing to be involved in something like that.
It's a new little pre-match night before, eh?
Yeah,
Nothing
I
wrong
mean,
with that.
but there must have been other times you went out for a little cheeky drink.
The night before?
Yeah.
Well, not me personally.
Seriously, what's he asking that, Robbie? What's he asking that for?
Whenever you were out and about, whenever you were away on trips and stuff like that, with regards to you're playing friendlies and stuff like that, yes, you did, right? But me personally, might have had a glass of wine or whatever with a meal on a Friday night, but that was it with me. Yeah. Because I couldn't function if I woke up the next day and had 4 or 5 pints the night before. I actually couldn't function with it. Like. Yeah. Some people could, and some people got away with it, and some people might have done it all the time, you know. But I couldn't actually function doing that.
Because Ali Robb told the story once. I think he was at Albion, and he said that he'd gone out. Him and a couple of others had gone out on a Friday night, and I think Big Ron was the manager, and he'd kind of called him in after the game, and Ali had kind of gone, "Well, we won, didn't we?" So he basically then had an agreement whereby until they lost, it was all right to go out.
Well, the Newcastle game, whenever we had a few drinks in that one, 1-4-1, that was fine. So the lads think they cracked it, right? Yeah. So the next game away was Sheffield United, right? Dave Bassett's time, and we get absolutely battered, right? Had a few drinks in the hotel that night as well, not to the same extent, but just a few drinks. Got absolutely battered, lost 3-0, and the gaffer on the Monday called us all in and said, "Listen, that's the end of that." Right, so that was the end of that. But listen, probably Newcastle lads were having a few beers as well, went on the night time as well. So it's a time whenever little things like that did happen. I don't think they'll happen now.
Well, there's also the famous story of in the build-up to the Sherpa Van final, you guys all go to Spain, and Burnley are there as well. And you're shaking your head, but there's been people
I wasn't there.
You're not in this?
No, I was away with Northern Ireland.
Oh, so you didn't
I missed out on a Spanish trip to go to Northern Ireland, man.
Well, you got to play for your country.
Well, I think
where would you rather have been?
In Spain, probably. I can't even remember if I played the game or not. But it's no. Whenever the lads did go away, it was such a tight group of lads. It was and honestly. And everybody said, "Oh, they enjoyed each other's company," and they really did. They were just a group of mates, really, you know, having to go with the football, and we're half decent doing it, you know. But whenever we did go away, yeah, we enjoyed the crack.
Is that why it worked? Because you were
mates? Helps. No, it definitely helps. It definitely helps. You know, if you're like Keith Downing was, I roomed with Keith for 4 or 5 years, and travelled in with him on the daytime, and you've got Keith playing inside you on a Saturday. You know what I mean? And he's your best buddy, you know. And if you can't pull a bit harder, and it's psychological. You're not doing it on purpose, really, but you'll find that you are pulling a little bit harder from people that you enjoy their company, you're good mates with, and obviously enjoy playing with. That for me will always happen without people really knowing it, but that will always happen.
Yeah, because you look at it sometimes and. We mentioned it a little bit when we were joking about Bully's goals and stuff. It's like
I wasn't joking, mate.
Well, no, you probably, I know you well enough to know you probably weren't. But that kind of that era is defined really by Bully, Much, you, and Tomo, and fans will always look at a thing, and I think there will always be, even though it was 4th division and 3rd division, there will always, I think, be an affinity to that group.
Well, I think the affinity comes from the fact that the club was really struggling at that time, mate. You know, and it was getting it back on track, and that's I think that's the big part of where the affinity comes from. Because would the club be where it is now without that time? You know, because the club was heading in a really bad direction at that time, and if we had stayed in the 4th division for a couple of seasons, 3 seasons, you know, Bully might have moved on, Muchie might have moved on, so all of a sudden you're really struggling to get out of that level. Would Sir Jack come on board then if you're struggling down at that level still? So it was a big time to try and start moving things forward, and the affinity, as I say, comes from those group of lads, and not just the 4 or 5 that you mentioned, Mikey. There was, you know, Mark Kendall was involved at that time, you know, Gary Bellamy and Floyd Street and people like that, you know, and so they all deserve the credit that even the like of Bully and what you're getting, you know, or do get. So great to be involved in it, and to see the transformation around that time in the club.
Right, we are going to go through our rundown, which will be available. Don't you worry, you'll enjoy it. It'll be on our podcast extra, available to download from all the usual places. There'll be so much more. If you can get in contact with us, oldgoldclub@wolves.co.uk, at Wolves across social media. There'll be much more on our podcast extra, Old Gold Club with Robbie Dennison. Thank you for watching.
The Old Gold Club, powered by Wolverhampton Building Supplies, with Mikey Burrows and Chris Iwelumo.